America's retail landscape is collapsing in slow motion. Big chains are shrinking, mall anchors are dying, small businesses are being erased by inflation, crime, labor shortages, and brutal commercial rent spikes. But the impact isn't evenly distributed. Some states are about to get hit so hard in 2026 that entire shopping districts, strip malls, and suburban corridors will hollow out like abandoned theme parks. We're talking thousands of closures, entire chains pulling out, companies declaring selective downsizing while quietly wiping out entire regions, and the result is the same everywhere. More boarded windows, more empty parking lots, more food deserts, pharmacy deserts, retail deserts, whole communities left without basic stores. Tonight we're breaking down the 10 states projected to lose the most retail stores in 2026. Based on store withdrawal patterns, corporate downsizing, bankruptcy filings, and the chain cluster model that shows where companies are most vulnerable. These aren't predictions, these are warning signs already happening, and 2026 is the year everything accelerates. Where California, the retail exodus capital California, has always been the heavyweight of American retail. Endless malls, mega plazas, luxury corridors, tech-infused shopping districts, and suburban strips that stretch for miles. The state practically invented modern consumer culture, but in 2026, that crown is slipping, cracking, and falling apart in real time because California isn't just losing stores, it's experiencing the largest retail evacuation in the country. A mass corporate retreat so dramatic it feels like the end of an era. Walk through San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Diego, or the Bay Area suburbs and you'll see the fallout. Not subtle, not gradual, but loud, undeniable, unavoidable. A closed Walgreens on one corner, a dark CVS on another, a Target downsizing, an REI vanishing, a Whole Foods shuttering after less than a year, grocery chains pulling back, electronic stores evaporating, restaurants collapsing under insurance rates that look like punishment. Even big, iconic, supposedly invincible brands are running for the state line. California still has money, still has population, still has traffic and tourism and wealth. So why is retail dying? Because the math stopped working. Commercial rents didn't just go up, they skyrocketed. Insurance didn't just climb, it exploded. Labor costs didn't just rise, they doubled in some regions. And crime didn't just tick up, it became a budget line item. Imagine trying to run a store where the insurance premium alone eats the profit of an entire aisle of merchandise, or where shoplifting losses are higher than payroll, or where a small store pays more in rent per month than a house in half the country. And now imagine being a national chain expected to justify that to shareholders. Companies looked at their spreadsheets, then looked at the street outside, then looked back at the spreadsheets, and they all came to the same conclusion: it's not worth it. So they started leaving, first quietly, then openly, then aggressively. San Francisco became the poster child, entire downtown blocks turning into retail graveyards, with chain stores fleeing like they heard a fire alarm the public couldn't hear. But it's not just the big cities anymore. Suburbs in Contra Costa, Alameda, Riverside, Ventura, Santa Clara, and Orange County are seeing closures they've never experienced before. Pharmacies pulling out of mid-income neighborhoods, grocery stores abandoning long-standing locations, clothing chains vanishing from malls that once overflowed with shoppers, strip malls with a third of their storefronts dark at noon. This isn't the slow retail decline the rest of America sees. This is collapse at scale, and the consequences are brutal. Residents suddenly have no pharmacy nearby. Seniors lose the closest grocery store. Families drive 20, 30, 40 minutes to buy basic essentials. Small businesses lose foot traffic. Whole shopping centers hollow out, attracting nothing but graffiti, pigeons, and regret. A mother in Oakland can't find a drugstore within walking distance. A retiree in San Jose has to Uber to a grocery store because her local one shut down. A family in LA drives past the same empty storefront every day, wondering who could possibly afford to open something there. California's retail collapse isn't theoretical, it's visible, it's daily, it's accelerating. 2026 will be the biggest closure year yet. The year national chains stop pretending they can absorb the losses. freezes. The year landlords start begging tenants to stay. The year California's retail map redraws itself with giant blank spaces where vibrant corridors once stood. And California is just the beginning, because the next state, Illinois, isn't losing stores. It's watching entire commercial districts implode. 2. Illinois. Chicago's commercial meltdown spreads. Statewide Illinois didn't wake up one morning and suddenly lose its retail backbone. This collapse has been building like pressure under a cracked foundation. But 2026 is the year everything breaks at once. The year the slow drip turns into a waterfall. The year Illinois goes from struggling retail environment to full-scale commercial collapse. With Chicago at the epicenter and the shockwaves rippling into every corner of the state. Chicago used to be a retail powerhouse. Michigan Avenue glowing at night, State Street packed, the Loop buzzing with office workers grabbing lunch, shopping, walking, buying. But what was once a thriving retail ecosystem now looks like a museum exhibit titled What Malls Used to Be. Stores limp along until the next lease renewal. And then everything goes dark. When one anchor store leaves, the mall gets sick. When 3 leave, it dies. That's Illinois in 2026. Downtown Chicago is losing stores faster than landlords can replace the window decals. National pharmacy chains like Walgreens and CVS are abandoning neighborhoods. Clothing retailers, tech stores, athleisure brands, all walking away. Target closed flagship locations. Macy's shrank. Whole Foods retreated. Even Starbucks, the eternal cockroach of retail, has shut down dozens of Chicago area stores. And it's not because people don't want to shop, it's because the numbers don't add up. Office workers never fully came back after the pandemic, which means downtown foot traffic collapsed. Crime is unpredictable, not everywhere, but enough to scare off customers and companies. Insurance premiums doubled, then tripled. Commercial property taxes skyrocketed. Retail theft became a daily budget line item, and landlords, desperate to cover their costs, kept rent high even as tenants fled. Retailers realized they were pouring money into stores that couldn't survive, so they left. And once they left Chicago, they didn't reopen in the suburbs. They pulled out of Illinois entirely, because Illinois has a second problem: population loss. Year after year, the state loses residents, workers, families, seniors, and every 1,000 people who leave take dozens of stores with them. Chains close 2 underperforming locations, then 5, then 10. Then they quietly decide, we're scaling back operations in Illinois, which is corporate code for both pulling out while pretending not to pull out. Drive through Peoria, Rockford, Decatur, Springfield, Waukegan, Joliet, or Champaign, and you'll see the same story playing out. Dark pharmacies, half-empty strip malls, malls that feel like time capsules filled with echoes instead of customers. Big box stores with parking lots so empty they look like crime scenes. The shutdowns aren't isolated, they're systemic. A grocery store closes in a Chicago neighborhood. Suddenly, that entire area becomes a food desert. A pharmacy shuts down in a suburb. Seniors lose access to their prescriptions. A Walmart closes in a rural town, and the town loses its main source of affordable essentials. Illinois is getting hollowed out from the inside. The worst part? There's no bottom yet, no sign the closures will slow, no corporate commitments to reinvest, no residents pouring back in. Illinois is on track to lose more retail stores in 2026 than in the past 3 years combined, a level of economic attrition no state except California can match. But the next state on this list, New York, is facing a retail crisis so intense that even Manhattan can't hide the cracks. And upstate is collapsing. Chapter 3, New York, high costs and hollowed out cities. New York has always been a symbol. Bright lights, dense crowds, storefronts stacked like dominoes. The city that never sleeps, the state that never stops moving. But in 2026, New York's retail heartbeat is slowing, dimming, fading. Not just in Manhattan, not just in the boroughs, but across the entire state. Because New York isn't just losing stores, it's hemorrhaging them. High rent, runaway insurance costs, stalled office recovery, Collapsing foot traffic and brutal statewide taxes have fused into a perfect storm that retailers simply can't survive. And now the cracks are no longer cracks. They're canyons. Walk down Manhattan's Broadway or Soho or Chelsea, places that once overflowed with shoppers, and you'll see the unmistakable shift. A boarded storefront between designer boutiques, a for lease sign where a national chain used to stand, a dark pharmacy, a shuttered grocery, a corner where a bakery, a cafe, and a clothing store all closed within the same 6 months. This wasn't supposed to happen in the world's most famous retail market, but it is, because retail math in New York has turned into a horror movie. Commercial rents aren't just high, they're world-ending. Insurance rates aren't just elevated, they're catastrophic. Labor costs aren't just rising, they're choking. And merchants aren't just suffering theft, they're drowning in it. Every big chain has started pulling out. Target closing Manhattan locations that used to be too big to fail. Walgreens disappearing from entire neighborhoods. CVS vanishing. Bed Bath and Beyond gone. Century 21 died, resurrected, and died again. Grocery chains looking at New York like it's a bad stock. Even Starbucks, the global king of we will open anywhere, is carefully retreating. But the story doesn't end in the 5 boroughs. Upstate is worse. Syracuse, Albany, Buffalo, Rochester, Binghamton, Utica, cities already bruised by decades of economic stagnation, are now losing their remaining retail lifelines. Malls closing early, anchors leaving permanently, strip centers with more weeds than customers. Pharmacies disappearing, leaving seniors stranded, grocers abandoning low-income neighborhoods because profit margins went negative. Entire communities are being thrown into retail deserts, not just places to buy clothes, but the basics: food, medication, household necessities. In some upstate towns, the nearest functioning pharmacy is now 25 minutes away, and if you don't drive, you're out of luck. Chains don't see New York as high opportunity anymore. They see it as high liability, too expensive to operate, too risky to invest, too volatile to justify. The irony is brutal. New York, home to Fifth Avenue and Times Square and legendary retail corridors, is becoming one of the most fragile retail states in the country. The middle is hollowing out, the outer boroughs are losing essentials, upstate is collapsing. And 2026 is the year the quiet retreat becomes an outright evacuation. Next up, a state facing a different kind of retail death, one built on foot traffic collapse, corporate flight, and a city that went from trendy to tragic in record time. Oregon is next. For Oregon, crime, shrinking foot traffic, and retail unprofitability. Oregon once felt like the cool, creative indie heart of the Pacific Northwest. Food trucks humming, bookstores alive, small boutiques thriving, and downtown Portland serving as the cultural anchor for the entire region. But in 2026, that image has shattered. Oregon isn't just losing retail stores, it's experiencing a full-blown commercial disintegration, with Portland at ground zero and the collapse bleeding outward into every surrounding city. The numbers are brutal, but the visuals are worse. Portland's downtown looks like a before and after photo where the after was taken during an apocalypse. Blocks that used to buzz with shoppers now echo. Storefronts that once pulled in tourists now pull in dust, graffiti, and wind. Entire retail corridors, once alive, energetic, iconic, now look like crime scenes after the police tape has been removed. And that's not an exaggeration. Oregon's retail crisis is fueled by 3 forces working together with frightening precision: crime, shrinking foot traffic, and skyrocketing operating costs. Start with foot traffic. Portland's office towers never refilled after the pandemic. Remote work stayed. Workers didn't come back. And when the workers didn't come back, the lunch crowd didn't come back. The shoppers didn't come back. The customers who kept stores alive Monday through Friday simply vanished. Retailers depend on consistent bodies, and those bodies are gone. Then comes crime. Retail theft, smash and grabs, night break-ins, daylight shoplifting that no employee is allowed to stop. Pharmacies hit so often they can't keep inventory on the shelves. Grocery stores losing thousands a week. Big box retailers reporting losses that destroy entire profit margins. It's not everywhere, but it's enough. Enough to scare customers away, enough to drive chains out, enough to make corporate accountants say, why are we still operating here? Finally, costs. Insurance premiums in Oregon, particularly Portland, have exploded so dramatically some retailers literally cannot insure their stores anymore. Rent remains high, labor is expensive, deliveries cost more. Everything costs more. Now put all three together: shrinking customers, rising theft, rising costs. It's a recipe for commercial extinction, and it's not just Portland. Salem is losing stores. Eugene is losing stores. Gresham is losing stores. Beaverton, Medford, Bend, all losing essential retail at a pace no one expected. Pharmacies disappear, leaving neighborhoods without access to medication. Grocers close, transforming communities into food deserts overnight. Big box stores abandon entire districts, leaving cavernous skeletons behind. Strip malls turn into zombie plazas with more empty units than active ones. Even the outdoor gear stores, Oregon's cultural staple, are pulling out. If REI won't stay in your city, you know it's bad. The tragedy is that Oregon wasn't supposed to collapse like this. It was the hipster capital. The artisanal capital, the walkable, eco-friendly, cyclist-friendly shopping hub, a place where small businesses were supposed to thrive. But the reality of 2026 is harsh. Oregon's retailers aren't thriving, they're fleeing. Once the most vibrant city on the West Coast outside Seattle is now the fastest hollowing out retail center in America. And the next state on this list, it's Oregon's northern twin, with the same problems, the same collapse, and an even bigger corporate retreat. Washington is next. 5. Washington, Seattle's collapse ripples across the state. Washington was once the poster child for West Coast prosperity. Tech booming, tourism booming, coffee culture booming, downtown Seattle packed shoulder to shoulder with shoppers, workers, travelers, and energy. But in 2026, that version of Washington feels like a memory under glass. The shine is gone, the crowds are thinning, and the state is losing retail stores so fast it feels like someone flipped a giant off switch on the entire commercial ecosystem. Seattle is the epicenter, a retail implosion so severe it's rewriting the map of the city in real time. Entire blocks that once felt electric now feel abandoned. The big brands left first: Target, Old Navy, Nike, REI, Amazon Fresh, Whole Foods, all retreating, downsizing, or disappearing entirely from neighborhoods they once dominated. And it happened fast. One year a store is thriving, the next the windows are papered over and a sign says in corporate language, "Never coming back." So what killed Washington retail? The same cocktail that destroyed Oregon, but stronger. Seattle never got its workers back. Office towers remain half empty. The city never recovered the weekday crowds that stores depend on. Downtown foot traffic is a fraction of what it used to be, which means the numbers don't work for retailers anymore. Then there's the crime surge, not everywhere, but concentrated enough to scare national chains out of the downtown core. Ask any store manager and they'll tell you the same story. Theft up, safety down, staff quitting, corporate headquarters over it. When your loss prevention budget looks like a ransom demand, closing the store becomes the only option. And Washington's problem goes far beyond Seattle. Tacoma is losing stores. Spokane is losing stores. Everett, Renton, Olympia, Bellingham, all losing big box retail, groceries, pharmacies, electronics, clothing chains, and home goods stores. The closures aren't random, they're systemic. Grocery chains are pulling out of entire zip codes. Pharmacies are leaving low-income neighborhoods. Malls from the 80s and 90s are turning into climate-controlled graveyards. Strip malls sit half vacant, collecting graffiti and pigeons instead of customers. Washington's commercial costs are among the highest in the country. Rent, payroll, insurance, taxes. If a chain is deciding whether to close a weak store in Washington Washington or a weak store in Texas, guess which one goes first? Washington loses every time. And then there's the population shift. People aren't moving into Washington the way they used to, at least not enough to sustain the commercial footprint that grew during the boom years. In some counties, families are leaving faster than new residents are arriving. And retailers follow people. When population stalls, stores close. The result? Entire communities are becoming retail deserts. People in Kent, Federal Way, Bremerton, Pasco, Yakima, and Longview now drive farther for groceries, further for medicine, further for basic essentials. Seniors struggle the most, so do families without cars. Washington was once known for convenience. In 2026, it's becoming known for scarcity. The collapse isn't dramatic, it's quiet. One store this month, another next month, a dozen gone by fall, a mall mostly empty by winter, like a slow tide pulling the life out of local commerce. Washington's retail identity used to be vibrant, modern, progressive, thriving. Now it's becoming something else, a cautionary tale. And the next state on this list? It's not coastal, it's not trendy. But its retail decline is just as devastating and twice as symbolic. Pennsylvania is next. 6. Pennsylvania, the Rust Belt retail recession. Returns Pennsylvania has been here before. Empty storefronts, dying malls, downtowns that feel like they're waiting for crowds that will never come back. If the Rust Belt had a heartbeat, Pennsylvania was once at its center. Steel mills roaring, factories glowing, small towns alive with diners, shops, and blue-collar pride. But in 2026, the state is facing a new kind of collapse. One that looks eerily familiar but hits differently. This time it's not industry leaving, it's retail, and it's happening everywhere at once. The warning signs started a few years ago. A Macy's here, a JCPenney there, a Kmart going dark, a Walmart quietly closing one location nobody talked about. But 2026 is the year the slow decline snaps into a free fall. Pennsylvania is now losing stores faster than it did during the Great Recession. Malls that once defined suburban life, places like Harrisburg Mall, Monroeville Mall, Wyoming Valley Mall, Beaver Valley Mall, are entering their final act. Anchors are pulling out, smaller stores are disappearing, food courts are turning into echo chambers. A few walking clubs remain, but retail? Gone. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh aren't spared either. In Philly, pharmacies are closing in clusters. Corner grocery stores vanish from underserved communities. National chains are abandoning Center City just as quickly as they are retreating from neighborhoods. In Pittsburgh, the Strip District and downtown are losing big-name retailers that once helped stabilize foot traffic. Office workers never fully returned, and without them, the weekday economy is collapsing. But the real devastation is happening in the towns between the cities, the old industrial arteries where millions still live. Scranton, Erie, Altoona, York, Reading, Johnstown, Lebanon, Wilkes-Barre. Entire commercial corridors are dying. Strip malls stand half empty, their signs faded like chalk in the rain. Pharmacies close faster than health systems can absorb demand. Dollar stores multiply and then collapse under theft and low margins. Restaurants fold not because people don't want to eat out, but because there simply aren't enough people left in the area to sustain them. Population loss is a key player. When people leave, retail leaves. When retail leaves, even more people leave. It's a vicious loop that hollowed out Pennsylvania once before. And now it's happening again under the weight of inflation, online shopping, and corporate downsizing. The saddest part is the emotional weight of it all. These aren't just stores closing, they're landmarks of daily life. The hardware store families visited for generations. The pharmacy where a grandmother picked up prescriptions for 30 years. The mall where teenagers once lived on soft pretzels and movie tickets. When these places go dark, it feels like a part of the community dies with them, and Pennsylvania knows the feeling too well. Now the state faces a future where shopping becomes a chore of distance. Driving farther, paying more, finding less. Entire counties are transforming into retail deserts, not because people don't want stores, But because corporate America no longer sees profit in serving them, but Pennsylvania's collapse is only one piece of the story, because the next state, Ohio, is quietly experiencing the same unraveling, only slower, colder, quieter. And by the time anyone noticed, half the stores were already gone. 7. Ohio. The quiet retail collapse of the Midwest. Ohio's retail collapse isn't loud like California's, or dramatic like New York's, or nationally televised like Portland's. It's quieter, slower, colder. It looks like 1,000 small moments happening at once. A store closing in a tired strip mall, a pharmacy shutting down in a working class neighborhood, a grocery chain quietly retreating from an entire suburb. Nothing explosive, nothing headline grabbing, just a steady, grinding decline that spreads through the state like frost creeping across a window in winter. Ohio has always been the Midwest mirror. Whatever happens here usually happens everywhere else 5 years later. But in 2026, the mirror is cracking. Retail isn't just shrinking, it's evaporating. Start in Cleveland. Downtown retail is a shadow of what it was. Tower City is barely breathing. Chain stores that survived the pandemic are finally giving up. One by one, locations go dark, windows covered, signs taken down, entire floors empty. Then Columbus, the city that was supposed to be the stable one. Even here, big box stores are pulling out of suburbs like Whitehall, Reynoldsburg, Westerville, and Grove City. Pharmacies have closed in clusters. Malls like Eastland have turned into the retail equivalent of ghost ships. Cincinnati? Same story. Chain stores are fleeing the urban core. Malls in the northern suburbs are losing anchors. Even grocery stores, the last to leave, are closing locations in neighborhoods where profit margins simply no longer exist. And outside the big cities, that's where it gets bleak. Entire commercial corridors are collapsing like dominoes. Strip malls, once filled with hair salons, restaurants, nail studios, discount stores, and local shops, now stand half empty. Weeds fill the cracks in the parking lot. For lease, signs hang crooked. Landlords beg for tenants. Chain stores quietly pull out and never return. And when a grocery store or pharmacy leaves a small Ohio town, it's not an inconvenience. It's a crisis. Seniors lose access to medication. Families lose access to affordable food. Neighborhoods slide into full-blown retail deserts. Ohio's decline stems from the same forces crushing the rest of the country: inflation, theft, high commercial rent, labor shortages. But one factor hits even harder here: population stagnation. People aren't moving in, businesses aren't expanding, communities aren't growing, chains don't see a future in a place where customer numbers flatline, so they leave. Quietly, efficiently, relentlessly. That's why Ohio's collapse is so dangerous. It doesn't make national noise, so no one pays attention, but the damage is deeper and more permanent. When a store closes in California, another one usually takes its place. When a store closes in Ohio, it turns into an empty shell for the next 5 years. And that's the truth few are willing to say out loud. Ohio isn't just losing retail stores, it's losing future retail stores. Chains aren't coming back, investment isn't returning, commercial corridors are freezing in decline. And if the nation wants a preview of what the American Midwest will look like in 2030, all it has to do is take a long drive through Ohio and count the darkened storefronts. Next up, Michigan, a state hanging on by a thread as its retail landscape collapses under the weight of inflation, slow growth, and decades of economic trauma that retail can no longer hide.